Greetings, everyone, and welcome back. I think this will be our fourth video for the first week of this course, Christian Cultural Heritage, and I'm glad you're back. These last two videos were a little bit longer. I think the next two, this one and the next one, which will finish out this lecture section, will be a bit shorter. So that's good. But we're going to continue on where we left off last time. So let me share my screen with you, and we'll go on from there. Let's see, sure, there it is. Okay, let's bring up the okay, let's do the slideshow here. Okay, here we go. We ended on this slide last time. We were talking about the elements noted there of the definition of culture, and I inserted here the definition we use for culture, which would be a good thing to know for your exam. Is an integrated system of learned patterns of ideas, values, behaviors, and products to meet the needs of its members. And so these elements below that we looked up at last time are here. They're integrated system, means they depend on each other. So if you change one part, it changes another part. You can see some of this happening by the changes in our laws. If a law changes, like, you know, marijuana was illegal almost everywhere, and now it's legal in some areas, some states, and not others. Well, it changes that integrated system. So, you know, you may be legal to buy it in one place, but you go over state lines and you're going to get arrested. So, you know, it changes things, it's integrated. And the learned, so it goes down to the cognitive areas that we talked about under the worldview and so forth. That goes back to this slide here, this section where worldview is. You've got your cognitive, evaluative, and affective. We're going to come back to some of these and talk about them. The cognitive is pretty straightforward. Evaluative is how we make value judgments, but the affective is a little harder. That's kind of things we like, what's pretty to us. And we talked about that last time. But you had the values, that's the evaluative part, how you make right and wrong decisions, what's your basis for that, behavior, and then products. And your members, it refers to society members, socioeconomic system, and how communities are organized. So just keep that in mind as we get on into this part, which is cultural diversity, which is one of the wonderful things about God. He created us with a lot of diversity in this world. And I'm glad for the diversity. I think it's great and fascinating, and getting to know people from different backgrounds. And there's a lot of ways we're diverse. Language is obviously a big one. You know, you go to one country that speaks a totally different language from what you speak. It's hard to communicate, obviously. And, you know, but the way they speak is so different, and their culture is different just because of the language they speak in some ways. So because of those language differences, how they speak of things is different. Physical items, we looked at gourds earlier, and you know, here we may use them for ornaments and birdhouses, but we don't necessarily look at those physical items as a bowl or a container to hold some kind of liquid or make a spoon out of, or a ladle. But physical items are different in cultures, and some cultures have certain physical items where others don't. Like when I was growing up near the Netherlands, they had wooden shoes. Well, wooden shoes aren't something you see in the US. So physical items vary. Lifestyle, how people live their lives. We in our culture, when uh, grow up, get to college, get out of college. Usually, you start your own home. You live separate from your parents, and you might get married. Start a family, but you live somewhere else. You don't live with your parents necessarily, and I certainly encourage my sons not to come and live with us. They now have their families, and they have their jobs where they're at, and you know, but they have their own separate household. Well, in some cultures, like where we were working in Kenya, the son marries, his wife comes to live with the son, and they live on the parents' compound or piece of land out there, and they have their little house next door to his parents. That's the norm there, and that's different. I have a friend who's a Muslim fellow, but it's similar to them. They live with their extended families as a group, and their idea of marriage is to marry a closer relative, so they'll marry as close as a first cousin, and they say that's because we know the families, and we keep our finances in our family, and so that's just a lifestyle that comes with their culture. Relationships with others is another area that varies. Some uh, cultures are more ethnocentric, is the term we use. That means that you're centered on your own ethnic group and your own nation, or something like that. And you look down on others, and you can have that kind of attitude. Some do have that. You can see an example of this. The extreme example, of course, would be Germany, National Socialist Party, Nazism comes into power. Well, they looked at themselves as a supreme race, and then anybody else, particularly they targeted the Jews, they say they're inferior, and they're so inferior that we don't mind exterminating them. And so you have the Holocaust. Relationships with others, but on the other hand, you can have the positive side of relationships with others, where good relationships and seeking out to live in harmony, which is what the Bible teaches with all people, as much as it depends on you, as Paul puts it. So relationship with others, another values. Different cultures have different values. Some cultures value very much the family relationships, and that's good. As Christians, that's one of the things we value. Other cultures, maybe it's less so, but each culture has different things that they value the most. In Kenya, where my kids grew up, they valued children a lot, and our kids would go out, run around in the village, and they come back fed 3 times because they always valued children, took care of them. But other times you get cultures or different areas that some of these things are not valued. Gestures is one that every culture has their own gestures. I imagine you can think of a number in the American culture, and when somebody gets upset with you, they sometimes give you a gesture, and so we do have them. We have the thumbs up gesture, or thumbs down, or a-okay. But we have to realize that in other cultures, those may not always be the best gestures. For example, the a-okay in some cultures is a dirty sign. Is similar to our giving somebody the finger, and in Thailand, for example, how we say to little kids, "Come here," Well, you don't do that to humans in Thailand. That's only reserved for animals. If you're going to do humans, you say, "Well, come here." So you need to know the appropriate gesture. We say goodbye here like that, Well, in I think it's Greece, in that's that's like flipping the bird. They say goodbye with their hand down, like that. And I learned that from some people that were living in Greece. So we have to realize gestures vary with culture as well. So does personal space. And we as Americans, we like a good bit of personal space compared to some cultures. Usually, we're okay if we're kind of arm's length from somebody. That's just about, if they get within arm's length, they're getting pretty close, and we reserve that for close friends and spouse or a girlfriend, boyfriend. But generally, we like them at arm's length. Now, not all cultures are like that at all. I grew up in France part of my life, and the French have a lot closer personal space than we. And then when instead of a handshake, they kiss you on both cheeks, so it's a lot closer. Same thing where we were in Africa. The personal space for having a good conversation is really right about here. And for Americans, that's uncomfortable. We don't like to have conversations that close unless it's with someone we're very close to. And so I know I've seen Americans visiting in Africa, and the Africans that come up close to talk with them, and they'll kind of eventually start stepping back until eventually they're stuck in a corner. But it's just not a comfort zone for us. But cultures vary on their personal space. So there's a lot of cultural diversity, and and God created humanity all in His image, but at the same time, there is a lot of diversity out there. All right, well, we're going to go back to the affective part that we talked about. You had the evaluative, the cognitive, and talk a little bit about the affective, because that's the one that people have the most time trying to figure out. Affective just means something that you like or is appealing to you, or you enjoy, or you like to have, type of thing. And all cultures view different things as attractive. And so what do you exactly find appealing? Like, for example, I just chose this. What kind of lips? Or I'll talk from a guy's perspective. What kind of lips? So we decorate our lips in the U.S. At least women do. I guess some guys do. But women use lipstick, or now you can see different piercings around the lips and so forth. But so yeah, here, from an advertisement, lips, what makes for beautiful lips in our culture, and advertisement tells us what people are generally looking at, or at least they're trying to get them to accept some kind of new kind of lipstick or some special type of lipstick, and to beautify lips, and of course they want that to make them appealing. Well, not every culture is like that. So, on the other hand, if you went to certain cultures in Africa, they have a different view of what's beautiful. Example, here you see lip plates, what they're called lip plates. And some cultures in Africa, this is a part of them beautifying themselves, making themselves attractive. They also have them in their ears, which we'll see some more of. But so this, this lady is looking very attractive in their culture. This one may be even more attractive. Her lip plate is bigger and everything, and you'll see here her ears. That's where they put, we call them kind of ear ornaments. They start with a very small stick when they're young, and then as they get older, they put these bigger plugs in, like things. I see some of this even today in our society. There's some people that have a nickel size. I don't see too much bigger than that usually, but that's that's part of being beautifying themselves and their culture and their lives. And but this one is the one who won the award. You know, like Miss America, she won her culture's award for the most beautiful lip plate, and we just look at that and we are quite amazed. But you can see here she has a plug in this ear over here, and some things up at the top, and this ear's nothing in it right now. But this is considered beautiful in their culture, and there's so cultures have different ways of beautifying themselves, and in our culture, same thing. And we have variations of that. We use tattoos, we use piercings more now. It used to be maybe not as much, but cultures do change. And so this is part of diversity of what people find attractive, effective aspect of it. So what's considered beautiful is in a culture is the effective. So coming back to the idea of culture, culture came to mean not merely the aggregate of human thought and behavior, but both the systems of beliefs that lie behind the ideas and the actions, and the symbols by which those ideas and actions are expressed. Cultures are seen as integrated wholes, in which the many parts work together to meet the basic needs of their members. And so, we have to remember that behind our culture is the worldview, which is the system of beliefs. What's our presuppositions about the world? What's our worldview? Open worldview or closed worldview? And of course, the Christian open worldview is behind a lot of what America has been and how it does things. But it doesn't mean that everybody adheres to that belief necessarily. So we're going to move into this next part here about the relationship between God and culture. How does God understand culture? What's the relationship of God to the culture we live in? And in that, or we could say, what is the relationship between Christianity and culture as well? And so to best understand this, we can go back to Christ, and we will. Understanding Christ's relationship to culture gives us an example to follow. So if you want to think about really God's relationship to culture, you really need to think about what was Christ's relationship to culture. Christ is God who's come in the flesh, as John says, and and God came into culture, born into a culture, the Jewish culture, which was a minority culture, suppressed by the Roman culture, and so that tells us something about God's relationship to culture, especially. So, but there are various views of a relationship. Richard Niebuhr, back in 1951, wrote a book called Christ and Culture, and he discussed 5 relationships that the Western theologians have seen between Christ and culture. And he gave these 5 perspectives. We're going to pare these down to 4 to make it easier. And there's some nuances that aren't that important. So what I've done is just take it with 4 perspectives of God and culture. And that is, some people perceive God as being against culture, at war with culture. And then others look at God in culture, and we'll explain what all these mean. And then others, God's just above culture. And then the final one, which is the one that is portrayed in the Bible, and that is God above but through culture. And so we'll get to that one in the end here. But let's look at each one of these and look at the problems with them. The God against culture holds that God is opposed to culture. Well, the problem with that is that God created humanity as culture-making beings. And culture is basically beings working together in relationships and producing. They automatically produce culture, and with in that culture, you'll have good things about the culture and bad things. Some things that adhere to God, some things that don't adhere to God wants. And but people who look at God as against culture, they're looking at it from one perspective that, well, there's bad things in culture, and God is against. So God is against the culture because of those bad things. So what happens is I call the fortress mentality of some churches is Christians withdraw, or they reject or escape or isolate or insulate themselves from the world. They're saying, well, world's out there and we're in here, and in our church building and so forth. And but the truth is we always have to interact in the world. And uh, and that's the picture God gives of his actions in the cultures all through from the Old Testament on to Christ. And Christ absolutely is he's opposed to some of the bad things in the culture, and he points them out in his teaching, but at the same time he's highly involved in the culture around him, trying to make it better and help people see what's good, but at the same time realizing there's evil in the culture. And you do see this, for example, in First John. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. This is the worldly things, the things that are not good. We shouldn't be involved with them. Or, as he says here, we know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. So those evil aspects of the world and where Satan is impacting them in an ungodly way is wrong, and they are there for sure. And the word for world, cosmos, is used broadly here to mean those evil aspects of the world. But this assumes because Satan uses culture evilly, all culture is evil. And that's not the case, because we know not all culture is evil, because Christ said so, and the Bible makes that very clear. And we have to realize that culture is not just something external, it's within us. Our culture resides in us, something we've learned. And we can learn bad things from our culture and good things from our culture. As Christians, we try to, transform ourselves away from those, letting those bad things dictate our life. And so we need to keep that in mind. But on the other hand, the Bible makes it very clear God's love for the world. There's that word again, John 3:16, one verse that a lot of people memorize. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. So the world's worth saving, and God sent Christ to save the world. And within that, there's good. Christ was in the world. He was part of the world, and good. So, and then if you go in Mark 16:15, Jesus' words before he ascends into heaven, and he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. We're supposed to interact with the world as Christians and to engage it, realizing, yes, there's evil things in the world, bad things in the world that we all are influenced by and have to deal with. But we're to bring the good into the world, and that good comes from Christ. And so, if get back here, so we see in this that God, knows that there's evil in the world, but there's also good, and it's worth saving. It's of value to God, and so we have to realize that. But part of our work is, to make things different in the world. And Romans 12, 1 through 2, a lot of you might know this one. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And so basically saying we're not to be conformed to the bad aspects, but be transformed, renew of our minds, putting our minds towards God to understand his will and do that in this world. And it has a positive impact on the culture. All right. So the second one, God in culture. This views God as created by humanity for something above themselves. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the next lecture series, that people think that there isn't really a God up there, but we create him. Humans create him because they have to have something greater. Like Sigmund Freud, for example, said people believe in God because they need a father figure. He doesn't really exist, but they make something up to have a perfect father figure, so they invent God. And in that, some people invent God to, saying, well, this is the God of our culture, and, you know, uh, and he's only concerned with us, and he supports what we do. And so he's kind of a convenient God, saying, hey, we're special to him, but not, you're not, that type of view. And the problems with this is it makes humanity the source of God, uh, whether they're doing it intentionally or for some psychological reason. And the other part is when it supports their own culture, it makes God a tool to support their own ethnic identity as being so special. And you see a little bit of this in Acts 10 and 15, where you have this controversy about Gentiles who are becoming Christians. And the Jews are saying, no, before they become Christians, they have to become a Jew because that's God is the God of the Jews. Well, no, God is the God of everyone. He did select the Jews, for a special purpose, but everyone's created in God's image, whether Jew or non-Jew. And so you get a picture of some of that happening. And you see in some of the cultures in the Old Testament where each area will have its own particular God who protected them and worked against the other people. And that kind of thing is in the various cultures depicted in the Bible. All right, well, then there's God above culture. And this one we see in American history. We'll talk about this later in a later lecture. But some of our founding fathers, a few of them, were deists. They did believe in God, but they believe God, he created everything and put in place all the natural laws and organized our universe and everything. And then that was it, wasn't involved anymore. And so he's a distant God, not involved currently. They did believe that as well as giving the physical laws, that there were moral laws that were given by him. And those moral laws could be found in the Bible. But they didn't believe in any kind of supernatural working of God. So, they didn't believe the miracles that were portrayed in the New Testament or Old Testament. And, the incarnation of Jesus coming, God coming in the flesh would not have been in their thinking. And so this is God above culture. He's not involved in our culture and really has nothing to do with it these days. So the problem is, of course, it takes God out of our daily lives. And of course, it's not the picture we get in the Bible. The Bible makes it very plain that God is involved. And of course, the big problem is it takes away the whole idea of Christ coming and dying and sending back into heaven. After he's resurrected, he takes out all that miraculous aspect of that. And of course, if God is able to create everything, why isn't he able to do all that? To them, God is simply a rule maker, not a father. It's not a relationship, as the Bible depicts our relationship with God and with Christ. Because the Bible talks about a father-child relationship, but with Christ, a brother-sister relationship. And really, this turns into a closed system created by a remote God, is the problem with it. All right, well, the one that we will go with and is depicted in Scripture is this one, God above, but through culture. This view understands God as above, not limited by, in other words, culture, but using culture as a vehicle for interaction with human beings. And we have to realize that God is so far above us that he has to come down, in a sense, and, bring himself to a level and a way of communicating that we can understand, and we can only do that through our culture, through our language, our our ideas, and how we understand things. And so God has done that throughout Scripture. He communicates to human beings through prophets, from the family heads of the families, through various other means that can be understandable to human beings. And then it was put into his communication was put into writing, but he did it in the midst of certain cultures. And so, like the Old Testament written in Hebrew and Aramaic, so written in the language of the people at the time, communicated in languages of their culture. And all through the Bible, you see there's good things in all these, in the cultures that are being talked about. Even some of the people that God is communicating with, they do bad things and they do good things. So it's a very realistic picture of humanity that we see in Scripture. But God works with His people in the midst of all these cultures, and He's always pushing them towards, following His will, to fulfill His desires and His goals for them, for the people around them, for their culture, and so forth. And of course, the ultimate of this is what we talked about a little bit earlier, is Christ, the incarnation, meaning He came in the flesh. God comes in the flesh and lives among us as humans. He lives within a culture. In this case, it was the Jewish culture, that minority group suppressed by the Romans, as were some others. And, they weren't the dominant culture. But He grew up in that, not with a wealthy family, but a poor family. And, so he experienced culture of that time, and he communicated within that culture, spoke Aramaic and taught in Aramaic, could have known Greek because that was a trade language. Uh, but he came, and as the picture down there indicates, that he came to serve. And so it's God, Yahweh from the Old Testament, comes in the flesh. So it's a picture of him washing his disciples' feet, tell them they're to serve in this culture. And so he's our supreme example of interacting in our culture. And he was condemned by some of the church leaders because he hung around with the tax collectors and prostitutes. And he pointed out, he says, hey, who are the ones that need the doctor, or the ones that are sick? And he says they have need of, things to help them to be better. But he also pointed out that you religious guys, you're hypocrites, and you're in need of opening up your eyes because of your hypocrisy. And so he has strongest words against Jewish leaders oftentimes, because they just were not following God as they were supposed to. Well, so that's God above and through culture, which is how we will discuss things in this course. So we just got to remember that all cultures are changing all the time. No culture stays the same. They may change at different speeds, but they basically are changing by various influences. One is with contact with other people. The more they come in contact with people of other cultures, the more they exchange ideas, thoughts, and products, and it makes changes in the culture. Environmental changes, with things going on in your environment, they change. So, in some areas, things are drying out, and that changes how they do things in that environment. Um, you know, uh, Cities are growing bigger and bigger, and that's environmental changes, and people who might have been living in the rural areas are now living in cities, and those are environmental changes. Development, cultures develop, and in various ways, and those developments bring changes because your culture is an integrated system. And some of the development, like example, computer technology has changed so many things. The way we can communicate now, like we're doing here online. When I went to Africa, the internet was basically barely beginning, and it was only in the universities, it had to be done between the universities. But it's changed. I can talk to people all over the world now, and like I'm talking to you, and that's a big change. Excuse me, and it brings changes to cultures. I have people in Africa that just call me up now, and that wasn't possible when we first went to Africa. Then education was people get education, they're educated and they learn more things. They use that learning and it brings changes to people's understanding to different in their culture. And modernization, modernization has changed a lot of things from industrialization on into modernization and technologies and delivery systems, and then that goes on into globalization, which means the interaction between all these different countries and cultures, and modernization is a part of that, and it's just changing things. So cultures are changing constantly, and now people in areas that were very remote can actually see more of other cultures via the internet and stuff, and they may start picking up, hey, I like that kind of style that they use there in such country, and they start getting close to that in that direction. So there's a lot of things that cultures change, but always cultures are dynamic and they're constantly changing. Well, to conclude here, here's a lady we knew in Kenya holding her granddaughter, and you can see here her ear there on the left, where she used to wear big plugs in her ear, and she had quit wearing them at this point. But some, depending on the tribe, the people group, they may wear them more than others. But a friend of mine sent me this picture of his friend in Kenya, and this was early before Bluetooth was real popular and known. But this was kind of an early type of Bluetooth. That one, a little old cell phone, not anywhere near a smartphone, but he found a good use for that space in his ears that he wasn't putting the plugs, so carried his cell phone. So different cultures, different things, and we just need to keep in mind as we conclude this session is that God is involved in working in our cultures, and He's asked us as Christians to use our Christian worldviews and our perspective of things to make a difference in this world, make a positive difference in making the world a better place by how we live with other people. And in this day and age, when we have so much contact and interaction between cultures, it's even more important than ever to represent Christ and how He interacted with people and tried to make the world a better place. So next session will be the last of this presentation, and we'll continue on that next. So until then, I'll see you on the next video. Take care and have a good day.